was a moment in my life, one that came suddenly, without warning. I was 24 years old when both of my parents passed away. You could say it was the most devastating event I've ever experienced. It felt impossible to accept. I couldn't even begin to process it until maybe a year later. And even then, it took a few more years before I could fully come to terms with it. It wasn't until I started living a life of compassion, a life of mindfulness, of connecting deeply with my inner self, that I began to find my way back. I learned how to truly be present, how to anchor myself in the moment. I connected with nature, with meaningful friendships, with the community around me, and slowly I found myself again. Eventually I had this deep realization. I saw clearly that my parents, my Song Thun, weren't just the physical forms I lost. They lived on in me, through all the precious values they passed down, in my DNA, in the time we shared, in their teachings, their love, and I felt them in every breath, in every cell of my body. From that moment on, I made a promise to myself. I promised I would carry my parents forward into the future in the most respectful, meaningful way I could. That meant living peacefully, joyfully. That became my mission, my gift back to them. I learned to let go of their physical presence outside of me, and instead, I started honoring them by nurturing who they were within me. I came to see that everything that happens in life, especially the painful things, holds a message. And losing my parents, it wasn't just an accident. I began to believe it was a kind of divine arrangement, a doorway to my freedom. It gave me the space to search for deeper, more transformative practices, ones that would help me open my mind, awaken my spirit, and live a life that felt truly meaningful. Maybe I needed to go through something that painful to ignite that fire in me, to push me past my limits. Because before that, my spiritual life, my path, still felt too safe, too ordinary. Later on, when I matured in my spiritual practice, I made a pretty big decision. I deliberately threw myself into the wild, literally. I stepped away from the safe, quiet comfort of the monastery. I left behind the gentle rhythms, the kind friends who admired and supported me. And instead, I entered a harsh, unpredictable, wild environment. Why? Because I needed to grow. I needed to build endurance. I needed to expand my capacity for acceptance. I knew that staying in my comfort zone too long would weaken my spiritual immune system. I needed a challenge that would stretch my soul. Even though I made that decision with full awareness, I'll be honest, once I started that journey, I still ran headfirst into resistance. I struggled. My mind fought back against everything that didn't go my way. There was this constant inner voice. Why isn't it like this? Why does it have to be like that? The cultural differences, the way people interacted, the sudden shifts in weather, the unexpected twists in my journey. It all triggered me. But thanks to my meditation practice, I was able to step back and notice those reactions. I didn't run from them. I took care of them. I sat with them. And gradually, after about 3 months, I found my stride. My steps became lighter. My heart opened up. I started to accept everything. The pleasant and the unpleasant, the smooth and the rough, the friendly faces and the not-so-friendly ones. Because the whole point of the journey was to grow my ability to accept, to stretch my tolerance, my patience. After 3 years in that space, I felt like I'd truly grown. Even though there were still times when life hit hard, moments that felt like death was right around the corner. I had 6 close calls where I could have died. And I resisted, fought hard against those harsh moments. But eventually, I would always come back to center. And every time, I discovered the same truth. The only way out is through. I needed to stop fighting reality and learn to observe it. Accept it, ground myself. Because the truth is, life will always throw us things beyond our control. Sure, some things lie within our reach, but many things don't. And for the things we can't control, our job isn't to fight, it's to accept. Fighting those realities only adds poison, adds stress, negativity, suffering. I learned that if I wanted to move forward, I had to embrace what was actually happening. Not what I wished was happening. That's the only way we can grow, the only way we can continue our path. Even when I wasn't living from my best self, even when my survival instincts kicked in and I defaulted to fighting everything that didn't go my way, I still had the capacity to pause, to wake up, to reset, to find clarity again. And when I did, I could see that those hard times, those challenges, were just the natural flow of life. Just like the seasons, just like the weather. They follow a law, the law of cause, condition, and effect. Karma, in a way. We can't change that law. We can only learn to move with it. The Buddha himself said it. If we want to walk through life with steadiness, with peace, with happiness, we have to learn how to accept both what pleases us and what displeases us. Because life will always present us with people and situations that disappoint us, people who challenge us, circumstances that don't go our way. And if we only accept what makes us feel good and fiercely resist what doesn't, we'll suffer constantly. Life's not built that way. Not everything that's right or just will happen the way we want. Sometimes the timing isn't right. Sometimes the people involved aren't ready. Sometimes more ingredients need to come together first. And sometimes we are part of those ingredients. Sometimes what's needed is our patience, our willingness to accept, to not push people away, to not resent them, to not erase them from our hearts. Because those people, they're part of our lives, our families, our communities, our society. And instead of constantly trying to fix or correct everyone, maybe we just need to look up at the sky. Even when it's dark, the stars are still shining. Maybe we just need to shift our gaze to look in a different direction. That alone can change everything. Even during the pandemic, when everything felt like it was falling apart, when there was loss everywhere, danger looming, and so many of our daily routines were turned upside down, who wouldn't want things to go back to normal? Who wouldn't want to get back to the workplace, to see friends, to move around freely, to live without fear? Of course, we all wanted that, but just wanting wasn't enough. We needed a whole constellation of conditions to align before that could become reality. And one of those conditions, one of the most important ones, was this. We had to accept the truth of what was happening. We had to stop resisting it, stop cursing the sky, stop wasting energy on frustration and blame. Because when we resist what is, we give away our power. We let the situation dominate us. We spiral into negativity, and we become a source of stress, not only for ourselves, but for the people around us too. So if we didn't have the strength to defeat the pandemic just yet, then maybe our job was to do something else first, to turn inward, to build spiritual resilience, emotional immunity, to nurture our inner strength. Because at the very least, if we couldn't change the outside reality yet, we could still make sure that reality didn't destroy us from the inside. We could choose not to be swallowed by fear or despair. We could accept that this was part of life, that in some way we had all played a role in the creation of this crisis, through our unsustainable choices, through how we lived without enough awareness or care. And instead of fighting blindly against what was already here, maybe it was wiser to pause, to ask ourselves, what now? What can I do with this? And often, the answer was simple. We could look for the things that were still good, still beautiful, still nourishing. We could appreciate what we still had, family, breath, health, even just quiet time. That was a form of recovery, a way to gather energy, a path back to peace. We needed that clarity, because with clarity we could respond to the crisis from a place of strength, not panic. We could be proactive, not reactive. And when our hearts began to reopen, something profound happened. Even though the pandemic was still there, even though the dangers hadn't vanished, we realized we could still live, we could still breathe, we could still bring out the best in ourselves. The presence of hardship didn't cancel our capacity to love, to grow, to create. We weren't powerless. In fact, We were capable of incredible transformation, but only if we were willing to pause and listen. Because every event in life, especially the difficult ones, carries a message, a hidden wisdom, a chance to wake up. Maybe the chaos was just a way for life to slow us down, to remind us of the things we'd neglected, our families, our health, our mental well-being, the simple truth that nothing lasts forever. It forced us to ask, what really matters? Maybe this was the moment to stop running, to stop striving endlessly, and to finally turn our attention inward, to reflect, to reset, to remember what this life is actually about. Maybe this time was asking us, have you truly been happy? Before the pandemic hit, before all the closures and restrictions, did you actually feel fulfilled? Were you living a life of meaning, or just going through the motions? Because sure, you might have had a lot of favorable conditions, a stable job, a good income, social freedom, but did you have happiness? Real peace? And now, even though we couldn't go out, couldn't travel, couldn't socialize freely, we could go inward. We had to go inward. Our souls had been waiting for us. There were unresolved emotions, negative patterns, old pain that needed healing, seeds of goodness that had yet to be watered. We had postponed self-care for too long, and now suddenly we had the time. This quarantine became a doorway, a rare opportunity to stop breaking promises to ourselves, to finally commit to personal growth, to explore a new direction, a deeper purpose. Maybe this quiet time was what we needed all along. Maybe, just maybe, these months of distance and solitude were what would help us discover a new path, not just for ourselves, but for the people we love. A path that aligned with our true calling, one that reflected beauty, truth, kindness. A path that offered not just peace for ourselves, but healing for the world around us. Because in the end, we're here to live a life of peace, of happiness, of service, a life that flows in harmony with nature, with the universe, a life that feels like it belongs to something greater. So maybe instead of resenting the hard times, we could learn to thank them, to say, I see you, I accept you, and I'll grow because of you. Let's open our hearts to this moment. Let's learn how to move through it, not by resisting, but by embracing. Let's trust that this too is part of our journey. And thank you, truly, for being here, for listening, for reflecting with me. Fades into soft. Now, when I talk about these things, about struggle, about awakening, about finding strength in pain, I'm not trying to sound like a guru. I'm just someone who's walked through darkness and found some light on the other side. And if I can do that, then so can you. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to know all the answers. You just have to stay honest with yourself. Stay open, stay present, and above all, keep walking. Because every step, no matter how small, is progress. Even on the worst days, just keep going. You are already stronger than you think. So here's what I've learned, what I keep learning over and over again. Every obstacle, every storm, every painful moment carries a seed of transformation. Sometimes that seed doesn't sprout right away. It needs time. It needs patience. And more than anything, it needs us to stop fighting what is and instead listen. That's why I've come to truly appreciate the power of mindfulness, of slowing down, of looking directly at the present moment, even when it's uncomfortable. Because the moment we stop resisting, we can begin healing. And the moment we begin healing, we start to grow. Sure, there were days I stumbled, days I got caught up in fear or anger or grief, days I fell back into old patterns of control, of denial, of pushing away what I didn't like. There were moments I let my survival instincts take over, moments when I snapped back into old habits, defending, attacking, shutting down. But I've also learned that it's okay. That's part of being human. The key isn't to never fall down. It's to recognize when you've fallen, and then gently, lovingly bring yourself back. Not with shame, with understanding. And when we do that enough times, we start to see that the chaos we feared so much, it was never the enemy. It was a teacher, those painful experiences, those unexpected turns in the road, they're not mistakes. They're part of the curriculum of life. They show us where we're still stuck, what we haven't yet healed, what parts of ourselves still need compassion. And often those parts are hidden deep beneath the surface, buried under years of conditioning, fear, or self-protection. But when we're willing to go there, to explore those places with honesty and kindness, we unlock a whole new level of growth. And maybe that's what all of this, life, struggle, even the pandemic, has been trying to teach us. To come home, to return to ourselves, to live not from fear, but from presence, not from control, but from trust. Because when we trust life, even the hard parts, we stop wasting energy trying to make it something it's not. We stop blaming ourselves, blaming others, blaming the world. Instead, we start flowing with life. We start seeing that everything can serve our awakening. Even that breakup, even that job loss, even that illness, even the death of someone we love. It doesn't make those things easy, but it makes them meaningful. And from that meaning we find strength. We begin to live more intentionally, more deeply. We no longer take each breath for granted, each connection, each quiet moment of joy. We start showing up fully because we know how fragile life really is. And from that place, life becomes richer, more beautiful, even in its messiness, especially in its messiness. So when you're struggling, when it feels like everything is falling apart, just remember, you are not broken, you are becoming. And the pressure you feel, the tension, the uncertainty, it's all part of the process, like clay being shaped on a potter's wheel, like gold being purified in fire. Transformation isn't gentle, it's not always graceful, but it's real, and it's worth it. And one day, maybe not today, maybe not next week, but one day you'll look back and see that moment, that challenge, it changed you. It made you stronger, more loving, more open, more free. And not just for yourself, but for everyone around you. Because your healing ripples out, your peace becomes a refuge for others, your growth becomes an offering to the world. That's why we do this work. Not just to escape suffering, but to become a light in the darkness, to offer hope, to remind others you're not alone. So wherever you are on your journey, whether you're thriving, surviving, or just trying to hold it together, know this: you're doing better than you think. You're exactly where you need to be. And everything you've been through, it wasn't for nothing. It was preparation. You're not starting over, you're starting from experience. And that makes all the difference. Let's keep walking this path. Let's keep choosing presence, choosing compassion, choosing courage. Let's stop waiting for life to be perfect before we decide to live fully. And let's not forget, even in the darkest sky, the stars are still shining. Sometimes all it takes is to look in a different direction. Even when the night feels endless, there's always that one moment just before dawn when the whole sky begins to shift. And that shift, it begins with you. Thank you truly for being here, for staying present, for listening, for walking this journey with me. And if you ever forget how far you've come, just pause, breathe, and feel your heartbeat. You're alive. And that's already a miracle. Now go live like it.